A New Orleans legacy, a New Orleans tradition. Broussard's, the courtyard's beautiful this time of the year. What weather? The interior is awesome. The food is even better. We're at 819 Rue Conti in the historic French Quarter between Bourbon and Dauphine. Put a little bit of that right here in my mouth. I'm ready for it. My mouth's watering. My eyes are watering. My stomach is growling. And I'm Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA TV, and a pleasant good evening to you. Glad to have you with us at this special time as we bring you another edition of our excellent television show with outstanding analysts to talk about the New Orleans Saints, LSU, Tulane, high school football, Hornets are getting their season started, and much, much more. Per usual, we do so with our regulars who do a great job, and they didn't miss me very much last week, I understand, much to my chagrin. It's nice to be back anyway, much to their chagrin. Brian Allee-Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. Always a pleasure.
Kenny, great to have you back. We missed you last week, and thank goodness for the Saints. Got a win this weekend. They'll have a nice week off and come back against Tampa Bay, so we'll see what happens.
He's refreshingly positive.
Absolutely.
Something wrong with him. Torrance Small, who played for the New Orleans Saints, of course, is a wide receiver, back from 1991 through 1995 with us. And Torrance, it is really a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to see you. I'm glad to see you doing a little better now. Hey, it's like having a replacement wrestler. Get out and get the main guys back in. So we're glad to have you back, man.
Well, it's good to be back, and I just figured that if I wasn't going to be here, we just plugged in a guy with the same name, so it worked out fine. And thanks to Kenny B for being here last week. And it's also a pleasure to welcome our special guest here today. He was as good as it got. Oh, look at the do, okay? The daily double, right? I mean, more yardage than any player.
I love when Jim Henderson
kicks against the Rams.
Jim Henderson
Speed galore. I mean, this guy could fly. I mean, he really could. And of course, I saw this in high school at St. Augustine. He did it at Nebraska. He did it for the Saints. He did it for the Cowboys. And if we're not careful, he'll run away from us here today. Tyrone Hughes. Tyrone, it's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on, guys. You know, we're going to get to some football, but since you're giving me 30 seconds to promote, I'm going to promote my company, Ty Hughes, Ty 33 Consultants. Got the best sheetrock, the cheapest sheetrock in the business. Come on out, give me a call, 214-861-8072. I'm also working with a nonprofit people's community. We're doing affordable housing, so give me a call.
It's a beautiful thing. When we return, we'll talk football and show you the Saints highlights and their win over the Chargers when SportsNOLA TV continues from Broussard's. Joe Horn is going to say something about this. Joe Horn hasn't been silent his entire life, but Marcus Colston, he's a silent type. Two diametrically opposed individuals, both extremely good receivers, and Marcus Colston showing you why he's worth the investment the Saints made in him. SportsNOLA TV from Broussard's in the Quarter. Ken Trahan with you. Glad to have you with us. And Brian, I'll start there. When you look at Marcus Colston, the Saints had to make a decision with the money they had allocated to re-sign Drew Brees, which took them too long, by the way, as we noted. They chose not to bring back Carl Nix, chose not to bring back Tracy Porter, and chose not to bring back another good player in Robert Meacham, whom we saw. Based on what we've seen from Marcus Colston, it's obvious they made the right decision to invest in him, and here's why. Aside from the fact that he's a very good, dependable, solid player, he is a guy that's mature. He's a character guy. You don't worry about him not showing up. He's always going to show up. This guy's hurt, and he continues to be very productive.
I agree, and you know, it's amazing all these years that Marcus has not made the Pro Bowl yet. And based on the last couple of games, wouldn't he, you know, I still, Kenny, you alluded to it, he's not 100% healthy. He's one of Drew Brees' safety blankets, safety nets, if you will, and he's just having a heck of a 2-week stretch here. He's one of these guys that you'd like to have the season continue next week. He's that good.
Torrance, Saints getting a few breaks for a change. They had a few against the Packers, couldn't take advantage. They had a few in this game, and they were able to take advantage of the breaks that they had. And if you give Drew Brees a second chance, which is what basically happened, instead of being down 17 points, all of a sudden they get the ball back, and they go and take it down and score and basically win the game the rest of the way. You give him a second chance, he's going to hurt you.
Yes, here's one guy you don't want to give a second opportunity to. Two great players around him. We talked about Colston being around. Devin Henderson is around him. These guys made big plays. They all showed up. This is what we expect throughout the season. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get a lot of these breaks. And when we did get those breaks, we didn't capitalize. But this game here, we were able to capitalize on the mistakes that the Chargers had.
Tyrone, when you look at this offense, they don't have a burner. Devery Henderson can get down the field. Even at his age, he still does a pretty good job. But now the quarterback makes them better players. Colston's a very good player. Henderson's a solid player. Lance Moore, a solid player. But you get an indication. Jimmy Graham goes down. They don't miss a beat. Somebody named Greg Camarillo steps in and catches 4 or 5 balls. That's all part of the quarterback and the equation and what he means to this team.
Well, it is. I mean, obviously, you know, Drew Brees, I always say this, as Drew Brees and this offense goes, so does this team. The defense depends on them to put up points, so that takes a lot of pressure off of them. But one thing that you have to look at is that this year he's been sacked a lot. Has to do with the offensive line. Not getting the pressure or I really think getting exposed, because what happens is now you see that even if Nix was in there, their whole offense is about timing. Once Drew Brees hits his steps, then that's it. The ball is out of his hands. But now what's happening is that those receivers are getting press coverage, and that timing hasn't been there. When he's ready to throw the ball, he's not able to get out there. Those receivers aren't there, so now he's been getting sacked, and that's been mainly the problem with the sacks. But then also you've also had drop balls between Colston, Graham, Sproles, you know, uncharacteristically of those guys, and for whatever reason, I think it's just a lack of focus. I mean, I don't care how much, whether Sean Payton was there or not, you know, it's just about execution.
Well, Brian, when you look at this game, there's so many things to point to. The Saints got a few breaks, but one of these calls was mesmerizing. First of all, there were some shaky calls, I thought, in the game, regardless of who's officiating the game. But Lenny Van Gelder pointed this out to me earlier today. When you look at that call against Martez Wilson, with the hands to the face. First of all, that's not where he starts. He's engaged with the guy, and his hands get moved up, and he gets the face mask for 2 or 3 seconds, and then lets it go. Obviously, it's inadvertent. It has nothing to do with the play. It's a 5-yard penalty on 2nd and 37, and it carries an automatic first down. Now, that's a contradictory element in itself. If it's a minor penalty, which is what 5 yards is, I think, how does it carry an automatic first down and gets a team out of a 2nd and 37 hole? It doesn't make any sense with the infraction. The penalty doesn't fit the crime.
Yeah, I agree totally with you. You know, and as good as I thought the first game back was with the real refs, I didn't think last night's game was well officiated on both sides. I thought there were some questionable calls, and in that case, that really could have been a death knell for the Saints. With a first down facing a 2nd and 37, like you said, Kenny, and that's a first down, I don't know. That's something they might have to address in the competition committee at the end of the season.
As you look at this game here, defensive line for the Saints actually got some pressure and got sacks in this game. I think 4 different guys got sacks with their down linemen, and yet this was the most we've seen Steve Spagnuolo blitz this year. Is that as a result of the problems they've had on the back end, or is it a result of the fact that they were facing an immobile quarterback?
Well, this is the thing. Here it is right here. The thing is, we lack talent. We don't have the talent that we need to run Spag's defense, the defense that he wants to run. We don't have that talent. So he has to come out of character right now. Out of character, when I say that, is do something uncharacteristic of him as a coach. He has to blitz a lot. He really doesn't like the blitz. He likes to use his front four. Our front four is not strong enough, not talented enough yet to get the sacks or get the pressure that we need on quarterbacks. So we have to go to other methods, and that's bringing safeties, bringing corners. We did it on the first snap. First play of the game, we sent the corner in and got a sack. So those are the type of things we have to do in order to get pressure. We have to create, and pretty much what we did with Greg Williams were here, always said the scheme was better than the talent.
1-4 now, Tyrone. Is this team, should they have or harbor any aspirations of reaching the postseason at 1-4?
Oh, definitely. You never give up until it's over. I mean, and I think any player on that team would also tell you that it's never over till it's over. So I think if they do what they're supposed to do, keep fighting, keep working hard, keep practicing. But again, it's just still going to come down to those guys have to execute, and that's the one thing that they haven't been doing.
You know, spoken like a true player, my friend. You know, let's not get overboard here. It's 1-4. There's still 4 games behind Atlanta in the NFC South. There's a bunch of good teams with good records right now through 5 games. I will say this. 1-4 is a heck of a lot better going into the off week than 0-5, and it's a positive. I'm not even saying that they're not giving up, Ty, but you got to be realistic here. They've got a tough schedule ahead.
You have to understand, they only played the first part of the season. You know, we're only a quarter of the season, and they're starting off the second quarter with a win. That is great. If we can win 3 out of 4 in this one and win another 3 out of 4 and the next one another 3 and 4, now look at this thing. It's a totally different picture. So you have to look at this picture in quarters, and hopefully we could just bounce back the second quarter.
Well, we saw Sean Payton at the game. We saw Mickey Loomis and Joe Vitt at the game. Strange in itself, given the suspensions, and yet who knows? Joe Horn, Brian, even tweeting that Payton might be let off at some point this year.
You know, Kenny, based on what we've seen the last 2 weeks with Greg Williams going into St. Louis and being allowed to watch the Rams game, Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, and Joe Vitt being allowed to come into the Superdome, we talked about it off air. You're either suspended or you're not suspended. I don't believe in all this, you know, this gratuitous type of reaction that Roger Goodell is doing. Either let them play, let them coach, or suspend them, but make a decision. This is ridiculous.
I think it's backtracking to a large degree, and I think people perceive it as weakness. And we'll see how it shakes out going down the road. It was nice to see them at the game. I'm sure Drew Brees enjoyed it. When we return in just a moment, we'll take a look around the NFL of what happened this past weekend and what is to come as Sports NOLA TV continues from Broussard's in the French Quarter. Sports NOLA Trivia. I didn't get the voice deep enough, but that's okay. Which former Saint caught a touchdown pass in 2009 to start Drew Brees' record streak? Was it A, Reggie Bush, B, Robert Meacham, C, Jeremy Shockey, or D, Torrance Small? Where's Tyrone Hughes on that list, for crying out loud? I don't know.
D.
Yeah,
I'm with D.
Well, you're not supposed to give it away.
Well, that's what I'm with D.
Keep it in mind.
Couldn't have been you.
Pretty good choices. We'll have the answer a little bit later in the show, and we'll have our hot seat segment coming up a little bit later in the show as well. Right now, we take a trip around the NFL to see what transpired this past weekend, as again, we start to get an indication of who's real and who's not. We can tell you that the St. Louis Rams are eminently better and very well coached, and they shut down Arizona, giving the Cardinals a loss 17-3. How about Andrew Luck? He's not lucky, he's the real deal. Indianapolis, a thrilling win over Green Bay, 30-27, emotional win there. More on that coming up. The Giants spotted Cleveland, 2 scores, and then Eli Manning said no problem. 41-27 over the winless Browns, only team winless remaining in the NFL. How about Miami beating the Bengals 17-13? The Dolphins are an improved team. In an ugly game, Baltimore won at Kansas City 9-6. They booed their quarterback and then cheered him when he got hurt. Imagine that. Pittsburgh, in an ugly game, beats Philadelphia 16-14, and the Vic turnover machine continues. Atlanta remains unbeaten. They beat Washington 24-17. The Bulls rolled Jacksonville 41-3. New England and Tom Brady over Peyton Manning in Denver 31-21. Seattle with another escape job. They beat Carolina 16-12. Minnesota, one of the real surprise teams getting it done very quietly, beat Tennessee 30-7. And how about the 49ers? They are beasts as they absolutely blasted Buffalo 45-3. And, of course, Monday Night Football coming out tonight as well. And you get a look at some of those results and you get an idea where we are after 5 weeks. So we always like to go around the panel and get an idea of what stood out in their minds. Brian, anything in particular that caught your attention?
The Thursday night game, let's start with that. St. Louis really dismantled Arizona. There's a 4-0 club, hot, good defense, I thought. And they went in and St. Louis really disposed of them rather easily. That was kind of set the weekend in motion for me.
Torrance?
The Minnesota Vikings. I think Leslie Frazier's doing a great job down there. Here's a team you didn't know much about. Christian Ponder. They said he was coming up, but he's having a great season. Adrian Peterson, the guy that got injured last year, he came back. He looked like he's 100%. And the defense is playing great for him right now. I'm looking for more big things for them this season.
Tyrone?
Oh, definitely the Patriots and the Broncos game. That was a classic. You know, looking at Peyton and Brady go at it the way those guys did, I think it was an awesome game, and it really showed. It showed me that Brady can run that no huddle offense efficiently, or as efficiently, if not more efficiently, than Peyton Manning.
And they both did it well. The difference was the Denver team turned it over and didn't finish drives, and the Patriots did. For me, it's in Indianapolis, and seeing what Andrew Luck did and the emotional scenario that surrounded this game with the illness of Chuck Pagano and the way their team reacted to it and the way this kid played. You know, all through the first couple of weeks, we're hearing about the young man in Seattle who's a nice quarterback. Of course, Robert Griffin III, who's a special talent who got knocked out of the game against Atlanta. But there is no doubt going forward, the guy that has the biggest upside and is going to be the all-pro guy is Luck. It's clear that the Colts made the right decision with what they chose to do with Peyton Manning. It's clear that they invested in the right guy. The guy has maturity beyond his years. If you watch him play, he has the maturity of a 10-year veteran. He's a step ahead on every play. He understands progressions like you cannot believe at that level. And to see him do that was very special coming from behind. Against a Packers team that, by the way, isn't all that. They're still the Packers, though, and they're still good, and they came back and won. So to me, Brian, I thought that was really a telltale sign from a young man that's going to be a special player.
I agree, and I'm going to take the other team. It was kind of a surprising performance by the Packers, up 21-3 at half, seemingly in control. And here's a team that people have picked to be, you know, to perhaps represent the NFC down here in the Super Bowl in February, and yet they're not playing anywhere close to the kind of football that they can play. They suffered some, you know, big-time injuries yesterday as well, and it just makes you realize that we always talk about the fine line, success and failure in this league. And you know what? If you do not come and play every week, this is what's going to happen.
No, there's no doubt about it. I want to take a look at the NFC South standings, and then we'll comment more on these teams as well as the rest of the NFL with Torrance and Tyrone. Of course, the Falcons, they are the real deal. They came from behind on the road. That was a very good win for them against the Redskins. Tampa Bay, the Saints' next opponent, that's another former Saint. Carl Nix of the Saints will be facing after the bye. Carolina, they're not very good. Told you that when they beat the Saints. And then, of course, the Saints at the bottom of that mix. And Torrance, again, this is a one-team division. I mean, it's the Atlanta Falcons, and that's why the Saints can easily finish second.
Yes, right now it's all about the Atlanta Falcons, and they are playing good ball. This team is running as smooth as a team you want a team to run, offensively, defense. And I think they won a game and blow a team out. They had to come back, played the tight games. They win in them a lot of different ways, and that's a sign of a good team.
Tyrone, I still think San Francisco is better than Atlanta.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Atlanta, you look at them last year, I think it's going to be the same thing this year. They're going to go through the division, doing what they've been doing, but I see them losing in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to get to the Super Bowl at all.
And then, of course, the Houston Texans are all that.
Yes, I would have to say. I would have to say so. I mean,
they just don't seem to have a perceivable weakness.
But one thing, let me say this: going back to the Indianapolis game, you really have to give credit to their defense, who had been struggling over this past season, even last year. Looking at the situation with Peyton, but this year, I think again it shows having a good quarterback, having a sustainable offensive drive, how that can turn the defense around, to giving them guys a rest, and now they're able to come back, and they played a great game against the Packers defensively as well. And Reggie Wayne stepped up big time with 12 receptions, over 200 and something yards. I mean, he's still a veteran guy.
He can still play.
Last 3 games, Green Bay, 8 sacks against Seattle in one half, no sacks against against the Saints, and 5 sacks in the second half against Indianapolis. Green Bay's got troubles on the offensive line, and until they get those corrected, they're going to have trouble.
And much like the Saints, they cannot run the football. Yeah. And if you cannot run the football, at some point, play action is a non-factor, and at some point, your quarterback is going to be in peril, and that is clearly the case with Aaron Rodgers, who can't escape but can't be hit all season long. Certainly the case with Drew Brees, and many times this season. When we return in just a moment, we'll bring out the gavel. It's our hot seat segment, all about the LSU Tigers being an elite team or not, as SportsNOLA TV continues from Broussard. And our Sports NOLA trivia question of the evening: which former Saint caught a touchdown pass in 2009 to start Drew Brees' record streak? Was it Reggie Bush, Robert Meacham, Jeremy Shockey, or Torrance Small / Tyrone Hughes? I don't know, I just threw it in there. And the correct answer is Drama's building. Jeremy Shockey against the Giants in 2009 to get it going. And Brees has connected for at least one touchdown in every game since then. How appropriate Shockey against the Giants. How appropriate Brees against the Chargers. Isn't it strange the way these things seem to work out? Ken Trahan, SportsNOLAtv at Broussard's in the quarter. On Rucontai, you need to come here. This place is great. Food's awesome. The atmosphere is fantastic. The tradition speaks for itself. It's the real deal. Speaking of the real deal, it's time to get the real deal on our hot seat segment, because we tell you the truth based on a topic that's a hot topic in sports locally for the present time. And today's hot topic: are the LSU Tigers still an elite college football program, or are we seeing a transition out of that particular classification? With that in mind, the floor belongs to Brian Allee-Walsh. Brian?
Ken, thanks as always. Well, I'm not ready to eliminate or take LSU out of the equation of being an elite program. I still think they're a top 10 program, as all the polls have indicated this past week. It's a bad loss at Florida. There's no getting around that. And if you want to really analyze the first 5 wins, they weren't very good wins either against any really good teams. I will say UW was a good win. UW has come back and played some decent football. But you know what? As long as they continue to struggle against an elite team like Florida, they've got 4 elite teams coming up, top 25 teams, I believe, in the next 4 weeks. We'll know a lot more about them. But I'll tell you, as long as they play football, don't run the ball effectively, Zach Mettenberger struggles, and they get pounded at will, and they can't stop the run like Florida did to them over the weekend. You know, college football also plays copycat just like the NFL. And if you can't stop the run, if you can't run the ball effectively, you're behind the 8 ball. And right now, LSU is behind the 8 ball. They've got a lot to work on over the next month, and we'll know more about whether or not they're still an elite program.
I agree with you. I agree with you a little bit there, the gray one.
You said the gray one?
The gray one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But here's my thing. LSU, if you do not get an offensive coordinator, ever since Jimbo Fisher left, the offense has been pretty much average. The players, great. The play calling, average. And I think it's unlike the Saints, where it's more scheme than talent. We have more talent than scheme with you guys. And I think Greg, help me out, guys.
Studwaba.
Greg, hey, we need to get another offensive coordinator, or Greg, you need to change your playbook. One or the other, or you will find LSU falling in the polls, and you will find them falling out of those top 10 and being an elite team if they don't get that change.
Well, first of all, I'm going to go all the way back to the national championship game. And I don't know what all of the distraction was, whether they were arguing about Jordan Jefferson shouldn't be the quarterback, Les Miles took over the play calling, whatever. It didn't work. And I always said, when it didn't work, you should have went back to what got you there in the first place. You had 5 Clydesdales up front. You had 4 thoroughbreds behind you. Regardless of how well Alabama was moving the ball, they still ended up, just like in the first game, kicking field goals. Your defense did its job. So you should have gone back, moved the ball, ran the ball. That's what your game plan is. Nowadays, it's not working. You supposedly had this new god coming in to take over the passing game. He doesn't look like a god, like the Hulk said in Avengers. So it's not working. Offensive coordinator, you got to come up with a new scheme.
Well, I'll tell you what, as long as their offense continues to not be able to protect Zach Mettenberger, as long as their wide receivers don't separate and hold on to the football, there's a lot of drops, a lot of turnovers. You know what? You suddenly pull back with your play selection. You call closer to the vest, and you know what? I want to see the Mad Hatter again. I want to see some gambles. I want to see some high risk reward kind of play calling. And I tell you what, I think that might be just enough. But as long as you can't protect Zach Mettenberger, you're going to be a one-dimensional team, and they're going to clog the box, and they're going to stop the run, and then you're in trouble.
That is exactly what's happened. You can't be the Mad Hatter. Not this year. You know, you have to make some plays in order to get that opportunity. Yeah. They haven't had the opportunity for him to make some of those unorthodox calls that he liked to make. They just haven't had the play. But until that offense change the way they do things, which I mean, an offensive coordinator. And I think they need a different offensive coordinator to come in there and help out because they have way too much talent. LSU, one of the most talented teams, offensively and defensively.
So you're firing the coordinator already?
No, move him to quarterback coach and give me another offensive coordinator in there.
All right, okay.
Now keep in mind, LSU will always be an elite program, just like Nebraska. They may not win the national championship. What I'm saying is they may not win the national championships on a consistent basis again. Different teams are going to step up, but they're always going to be an elite program. Nebraska is still an elite program.
It's time for the judge to render his decision. Order in this courtroom. Enough already.
We don't believe that.
LSU is an elite football program in college football. Can they remain there? Yes. Will they remain there? That remains to be seen. I do not subscribe to the theory that they have elite football players on offense because I don't think they do. Show me one of their offensive linemen right now that's going to be a bona fide NFL star or a starter in the NFL. I don't see him. And they have a young man hurt in Chris Falk who's pretty good, and his loss certainly hurt them. Show me one of their receivers that's going to be a guy that plays in the NFL. I haven't seen him. If Odell Beckham is your best receiver and you're in the SEC, with all due respect to Odell, and I love him and his family, that says a lot about your lack of overall talent. Running back position. The oldest saying in the world is that you have, of course, the master or the jack of all trades, but master of nothing. Well, they have a bunch of guys who are solid to pretty good, but nobody who's really outstanding. Kenny Hilliard and Spencer Ware run into people. Michael Ford doesn't have any real shakes, and maybe the guy that was the best of the bunch got hurt in Alfred Blue, and how good was he really? Jeremy Hill is a young guy, we'll see. They don't have a home run hitter on this offensive football team, not against an SEC-level team. Odell Beckham gets wide open, he catches a pass, and what happens? He can't protect the football and gets stripped. He dropped the ball later in the game as well. They don't have elite talent on offense. I'm sorry, they don't. Zach Mettenberger hasn't been bad. He hasn't been real good, and when he does make a play, they can't get it done and finish behind him. Defensively, they're still a very good football team, and their kicking game is awfully good as well. So here's my answer to the question. Let's see what they do against South Carolina, who is, by the way, a team that has a chance not only to play for the SEC championship, but the national championship. They can line up with Alabama with the talent they have. So I think we're going to find out everything we need to know this coming weekend. To me, this LSU football team has not been the same since that game against Alabama in the Superdome. We have not seen evidence of it. They did play well against Washington, a team that's decent, but nothing special. Other than that, I don't see this team being anywhere near the level of the team that we saw playing all the way into November last year. That team I don't recognize anymore. So we'll see starting this week against South Carolina. And, of course, when you have a question, man, there's a place for you to go. We have the answers for you. At SportsNOLA, Facebook is at sportsNOLA.com. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have pertaining to sports on a local, statewide, regional, or national basis. Again, at SportsNOLA, and go to Facebook as well at SportsNOLA, and of course visit sportsNOLA.com with regularity. When we return, we'll take a look at LSU, Tulane, and prep football as well as SportsNOLA TV continues from Broussard's on Rue Conti in the French Quarter. Now at sportsNOLA.com, you get analysis of the Saints' victory over the Chargers. Of course, college football recaps, LSU, Tulane. How about Louisiana Tech playing great? ULM, good program. ULL, good program. Keep going. Of course, the most complete prep coverage anywhere, anytime at sportsNOLA.com. And our first NBC video updates each and every Monday and Friday, all at sportsNOLA.com. Ken Trahan, Broussard's Restaurant, 819 Rue Conti in the quarter. Glad you've joined us. And of course, we talked about LSU and whether or not they're elite. We'll find out pretty quickly against South Carolina after they got dismissed at Gainesville, losing 14-6 to the Florida Gators. LSU jumped out quickly in this game. They had a 6-0 lead at the half. Finally got started in pretty good fashion in this game.
Got to put some points on the board, and we're going to get to this in a moment. Put points on the board, play good defense on the road, and generally to win.
Drew Alaman putting LSU on top. Defense was brilliant in the first half, Torrance.
Oh, they were great. Florida could not keep them off their quarterback. They got a lot of sacks, but the second half they came out and they just ran the ball, which surprised me that LSU would let Florida run the ball the way they do.
I don't think they let them. I just think the LSU defense I thought they wore down a little bit. Here's a great defensive play. Now, LSU cannot convert this into a touchdown, which is really ridiculous. Get a field goal out of it. And then in the second half, I think Florida made adjustments, and I think the LSU defense wore down, Tyrone.
Well, Florida committed to the run or short games, the screen passes right here, or just, I think it was like the last 20-something plays
Ran the
were
ball
all
every time.
ran the ball. and so basically they committed to the run. And they knew LSU, they were out there too much. And
This is a pivotal play of the game right here, Brian.
Yep.
That was a great defensive play. That was a great defensive play.
Beckham has got to protect that ball.
He's more worried about stiff-arming the guy instead of just taking a 40-yard gain and going down.
You know what, Kenny, when they had a chance to punch it in right before halftime when they recovered the ball, 2 timeouts there were so inexplicable. I just, you can't win. If you're an elite team, you have to punch that in and take a 10-point lead into halftime.
Well, they have no symmetry on offense, no conceivable plan.
Good work.
And obviously they have no more winning streak. 18-game regular season winning streak snapped, which was, by the way, a remarkable streak. But again, they rushed for 42 yards, and that's not going to get it done anytime, anywhere against anyone. Now, we should have known this because they couldn't run the ball against Towson the previous week other than 1 run. So we should have known better. South Carolina coming up as a result. As for questions, we encourage them all the time. We got one from Ask Sports NOLA in reference to LSU. So, guys, I'll let you address the question. The loss is squarely on Les Miles and the pathetic play calling offensively, exclamation point. Tyrone?
Well, excuse me, that's just what we just talked about. Offensive coordinator. When you look at the defense, I think they were out there a lot, but Florida pounded the ball at them. LSU has historically, again, going back to last year, they didn't have, you talk about Jordan Jefferson, you talked about Flynn or Jared Lee, throwing the ball or not being able to throw the ball. Now you got Mettenberger. I haven't seen a quarterback in college other than really Luck who is a professional type thrower and that's in a professional offense. Everybody runs this spread offense where they're going to do the zone read and have a quarterback that's going to run, and nobody has a quarterback who can actually line up and throw the ball. Not even at Alabama. They don't have a quarterback that can literally just stand there and throw the ball down. If any of these teams had to get into a 2-minute situation, none of them would make it.
Well, it's about being efficient, though. Regardless of what offense you run, how you run it, it's about being efficient. LSU is not being efficient right now. Bottom line. And that goes to Les Miles, who said he wanted to call the plays, and the offensive coordinator. Until they make some changes in that, we're going to see more of the same. Just like we saw in the national championship game, more of the same. They look confused. They look they don't know what to run. And until they make these changes, we're going to see more of the same.
Well, ask yourselves this. What is the LSU's personality on offense right now? I don't know what it is. They don't have one.
It's the same problem that they were talking about 2 or 3
right.
years ago.
Well, all right, but
we don't have identity.
But the first quarter of the season, they were able to run the ball effectively. They can't run the football now, and they can't protect Mettenberger. And when you can't do either one, you got problems.
And they haven't replaced Falk. Their offensive line was better last year and the year before than it is now, and that certainly makes a difference. Let's take a look at the polls now to give you an idea about what people think about LSU on a nationwide basis. Look, they're still getting a lot of respect. LSU is number 8 in the country. Ironically, who would have ever thought Notre Dame would be ahead of LSU in the polls? Where's that elite Nebraska program? I haven't seen them there.
Want to get great players, though.
South Carolina is number 3. West Virginia scores about 500 points a week. They can't stop anybody, but they're there. Kansas State, Bill Snyder, Florida, deservingly. USC and Oklahoma bringing up the rear of the top 10. And I think it's pretty fair, and LSU gets a lot of respect because they deserve it based upon where they've been over the past several years. One team you won't see anywhere near those polls, Tulane. Of course, I don't say that to be negative. Just talking honestly here, they're nowhere near ready to compete. They showed that again in Lafayette this past weekend at the other swamp as they got swamped by the Raging Cajuns 41-13. It's their worst start since 1991. at 0-5. Justin Shackelford had a 71-yard touchdown reception. Tulane cannot run the ball at all. Nothing to do with their running backs, who are solid. They just can't block. And now SMU comes to town to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome at noon this coming Saturday. Brian, they might get Ryan Griffin back, their quarterback. They have no prayer without him, and it's obvious they've gone straight down the tubes without him. So hopefully they get him back, and hopefully he stays upright.
Well, you know, you hate to say 5-6 games into a season that you're looking forward to the end, but I think in Curtis Johnson, I know he's such an optimistic man, and you have to be in this situation. But boy, you know, you just hope you can get through, not have any calamities occur over the last 6-7 games of the season, and just look forward to next year.
Yeah, young team, new coach. He's in a difficult situation right now. They're in a rebuilding stage. It's going to take some time, but like you say, the thing right now is keep these kids, keep them excited, keep them into the game, want to get better. Hopefully things will turn around for them. Not so much for wins, but just the attitude.
And I think one of the things you got to look at, you know, I mean, again, Curtis, this is Coach CJ's first season, but again, you have injuries to your major players, and now again, you have these younger guys, just like with the Saints, that have to step up and play and not really sure what they're doing and have an understanding of what's going on. And so you're throwing these guys into the fire, and they're just not ready to go.
Well, we said it from the very beginning, but this is a program that has no depth. And when you lose frontline guys, you're dead. You lose your quarterback, Ryan Griffin. You end up playing with a guy that was playing independent league baseball, starting as your quarterback when he was hitting baseballs just over a month and a half ago. And then, of course, you take a look at your defense. You lose your best player, who's obviously done with his off-the-field problems. Then you lose your starting center, and you have no one, and I mean no one, to step up and fill the void in any of those sizable holes that have been left. And I think that's what we've seen of Tulane. Time to take a look at high school football and our SportsNOLA.com Prep Player of the Week. And for the New Orleans Quarterback Club at WGSO 990 AM as well, he is Dominic Henry, senior quarterback of South Plaquemine. What a game against Newman Friday night. 20 carries, 189 yards, 5 touchdowns. Never had to throw a pass as South Plaquemines routed Newman 60-13. Brilliant performance by Dominic Henry. Cedric Figaro, former Notre Dame star, getting it done. And obviously he's got a program that's one to watch moving forward that has a great history of success. Previously under Cyril Crutchfield, who won a couple of state championships there, who's moved on to that other school that Tyrone knows about, and now Cedric's got South Plaquemines in a good place, coming off of a very good win against a good Newman team in convincing fashion. So congratulations to Dominic Henry. We'll take a timeout. We'll take a look ahead at what's to come with the Saints and more as we continue with Sports NOLA TV from Broussard's in the historic French Quarter. Broussard's Restaurant and Courtyard since 1928, 19 Rue Conti in the Quarter between Bourbon and Dauphine. Dinner Monday through Sunday, 5:30 to 10. Go to Broussard's at broussards.com to email us, or go online to broussards.com to check out the extensive menu, the rich, outstanding selections you have at Broussard's. We hope you will, as we do, and come by and visit one of the true institutions in New Orleans, Broussard's Restaurant. The first NBC Prep Showcase continues with the Newman Greenies taking on the John Curtis Patriots, #1 team in America. And you can watch it Saturday morning at 9 a.m. here on WHNO Channel 20 and get a look at an incredible football team in John Curtis against Nelson Stewart's Newman Greenies, who have some very good young players, including Jay Tyler, their fine sophomore quarterback. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV from Broussard's. The Saints enjoy a bye week, but the schedule upcoming is one that's going to make it very interesting to see if they can get back in to playoff contention. It all starts on the road at Tampa Bay. That's a must-win before they go to Denver and take on Tracy Porter, Peyton Manning, and the Denver Broncos, and then the Eagles come to the Dome. Okay, Brian, can they run the course here? Can they sweep these 3 games and get back to 500 in your mind?
Yeah, I think they can. And to me, obviously they have to take it one game at a time. You've got 2 big road games that they've got to take care of business. I really wonder if Michael Vick will even be around when Philly comes into town. I didn't think he would be at the start of the regular season. We'll see what happens. But listen, they could get back to 4-4, and then it's all even, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, I like to see them. If they could take 2, like I say, the second quarter, If you could come out of this thing 3-1 in the second quarter, you bounce back, now you're back to 500. You have the second half of the season where you come back and hopefully turn this thing around.
I just think they need to get back, get the guys healthy, get all of their starters out there, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The receivers need to execute and start focusing, catching the ball, being more consistent, and definitely the defense needs to have some type of communication and start making tackles.
Yeah, I'd like to see Hawthorne and Casillas come back. One guy that has done the job is Lofton. He's played pretty well, Brian.
Absolutely. I think he leads the NFL in tackles, Kenny, through 5 games. And look, they get Joe Vitt back, and I think Joe Vitt will bring additional stability to this organization, the football operations. It'll allow Aaron Cromer to go back to do what he does best. And you know what? It could make a difference.
Well, the Saints' upcoming schedule is one that's interesting, but one that certainly they can navigate based on who they're playing. You got to wonder how they're going to perform at altitude, but first things first, you got to deal with Tampa Bay and a division rival, and that will not be an easy task at all. Get past that, I like their chances. Torrance, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us, my friend.
Well, it's great to have you back. You're the one we're happy to have back, and hope you get better. Hope you
What's
feel
my
better.
name? Just kidding, Brian. Always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Great to have
Ken.
you
You
with
too.
us.
I'm
Keep
glad
up
to
the
have you
great
back,
work
buddy.
At sportsNOLA.com. Tyrone, thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
Really,
always a pleasure.
Always good to have you.
You know, I love the television, so that's anytime.
Hit them straight, buddy. For Brian, for Torrance, for Tyrone, for Andrew, for Adam, for Lenny, our entire crew that does an awesome job, and for Broussard's Restaurant, I'm Ken Trahan, saying thank you for joining us and be a good sport. God bless you one and all. We are rounding third and heading home. So long.